Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good day, one and all. You have joined us today as, as we gather most Sundays for our program, Cultivating Voices, live poetry. I'm your host, Sandy Yannone, joining you today from Olympia, Washington. And it is April. Oh my gosh, it is April, which means here in the States and in various places around the world, it is Poetry Month. But as I like to say with this group, I mean, every day is Poetry Day, and really every month is Poetry Month. But but this is our opening kickoff to the official way of ringing in Poetry Month to our audiences around the world who will be listening live as well as watching on our recordings. I want to thank, of course, as I hope I always do, the dedication of Don Krieger and Ports Parsons to our work to put the program on. It's not possible at all without them. Today, as we celebrate the opening of Poetry Month, we thought it would be really fun to have a focus on the different forms that poetry takes. Some of you are connoisseurs of the various forms of poetry that have endured time and also exploring the variations on those forms, the breaking of those forms and seeing what they do. So today, I hope you're all in good form for our Poets Focus on Form. We'll be hearing one poem apiece from each of our readers. We'll get as many folks in as we can in the 90 minutes that we have for the program. And also, in addition to maybe learning a little bit about how folks use the forms and why form has been so important to each of you in your endeavor of writing poetry. I also want to just acknowledge that on March 29th, it was our third anniversary for Cultivating Voices live poetry. And so this is also a little bit of our anniversary reading, a way to kind of acknowledge that we're heading into our 4th year of this miraculous work. There are folks here in the room who were with us in those very early months of 2020. And I want to thank those of you who were joining us then and those of you who have continued to join our program. It's been quite a delight to be able to host this program every week or most weeks and learn so much about poetry and the devotion that people have to poetry. Well, on that note, let's get to our reading, shall we? Our Poets Focus on Form. Just a reminder again, it'll be one poem with a little bit of commentary about your poem. It'll be great. I want to remind you also, please use the chat generously to show your support and love of the work that you're hearing. I find that our reading series is one of the most active chats that I encounter, and I appreciate all the enthusiasm and respect that everyone brings to our chat. Before we do, I just a couple books I pulled off of my shelves that I wanted to share with you about poetry and form. And as I mentioned a little earlier, I want to encourage, if you've got really great book recommendations about poetry and form, there's so many anthologies for each different forms. please do share that with our audience today in the chat, and maybe I'll be able to pull some of those things from the chat and share them with others. Just a few titles that I thought I'd share with you. This is a book about, it's called Obsession, Sestinas in the 21st Century. It's edited by Carolyn Beard Whitlow and Marilyn Crissell. And I mean, we've featured this. We could do a whole reading just on the Sestina, but it's a really, really great book. And in addition to that, another of our members, Jules Nyquist from Jules Poetry Playhouse, has her book, The Sestina Playbook, and I really recommend this book. Jules, from time to time, has actually offered a class on Sestinas out of the Poetry Playhouse in Placitas, New Mexico. Well, a little older books. This was a very groundbreaking book from Storyline Press in 1994, but I still think it is holding true, and it's great book. If you've not seen this, A Formal Feeling Comes, poems informed by contemporary women poets, edited by Annie Finch. I remember there was so much talk when this book came out, and a really, really wonderful book about formal poetry by women. And a book near and dear to my heart also, you can see it's kind of earmarked quite a bit, is if you're into sonnets, The Making of the Sonnet. This is edited by Edward Hirsch and Yvonne Boland. So that's just a few titles for you today, and feel free to put more in the chat. Well, and let's get to our first reader today. I'm really excited. I know that I've loved how Cathal Mac has used form in the past on the program, and so it's no surprise to me that you are here with us today and at the top of the hour, our first reader today. Thank you so much, Cathal, for being here today.
Well, that's definitely a first as well, Sandy. I'm first in the pack. That's great. Delighted to be here. Congratulations on moving into a fourth year, to you and Dawn and Kim and Josephine, everybody here. It's always been well worthwhile listening and tuning into you. It's always been a joy. Yes, form is very important to me. I thought today I'd read you a very short poem. It's iambic trimeter, and it's in sight rhyme. So I hope you enjoy it. It's called Catharsis, and the relation to Theban is feeding back to the Oedipal legend of Greek mythology, where he blinded himself once he'd known he'd married his mother, etc. But anyway, here we go. It's called Catharsis. And catharsis is basically where you purge your emotions and feelings through art, music, writing, whatever. Catharsis. In blood-gilt, bloodied rouge, like the Theban eyes gouge, out to sightless slaughter in damned, mournful laughter. Oracles true to soul from cloth cleansing anew. Should I reach for that height and let fall that cursed weight that holds back rage's reign till calm waters again might purify the wound where fear and loss are found? From self-involved hubris to clear away debris, words left unsaid, too slow, too late to rescue now. Catharsis's kiln fires do, a soul hardened just so, to rise again and vow memory holds fast below. And that's it. Back to you. Back to you. Thank you all.
Oh, beautiful. Cathal Mac Threinhir, thank you. Beautiful reading. The poem, Catharsis, fabulous. Wow.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great night. Well, our next reader, it's so nice to see Bill Fay with us today. Great to have you. And Bill will be followed by Giulio Magrini. Welcome, Bill. Good to see you today.
Yes, great to be here. Haven't been here in a while. So I'm doing a rondo, 15-line version, 8 syllables a line, very tight rhythm. This was after I saw an orchestra perform a Furioso. in quick cut time. In quick cut time, freed like a steed, all notes find homes at this great speed. Their eyes and hearts and hands fluoresce, compress the time they would confess. Hail Mary on a double reed. Will horns allegro dare exceed, or willful drummers win indeed? And will the streams just acquiesce in quick cut time? The music bucks like God's stampede, rushed wild with devils it's decreed. Will players buckle in distress, and sweat pours from the audience? The band caught fire like autumn leaves in quick cut time. Thank you.
Wow, what a great one. I also love the form. Folks, feel free also to put in the chat about the form. Thank you so much, Bill, and delivered with your always amazing fervor for the poem. Fabulous. Thank you so much. Oh, what a great poem.
Great to be here, and thank you for hosting this.
Absolutely. I knew Kim that I knew the reading would energize us. First two right out of the gates. The form has that way of propelling and creating its own momentum. Heard that just in the first two poems. Well, let's see what our good friend Giulio Magrini has to share with us today. And you will be followed, my friend, by Josephine LoRe.
Thank you, Sandy. Coming to you today from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I wrote this for an Asian restaurant here in Pittsburgh. And it was important to me that the language be subtle and yet hit hard. Not used to doing that. But the name of the restaurant is Hong Kong, and that's the name of the poem. Soft white and pink lotus float downstream. Kayagum twang a rhythm of life. Butterflies flip in gardens. A young boy contemplates poetry and affirmation. Is it possible? Glad hearts.
Giulio Magrini joining us from Pittsburgh. It's with his contribution for today's Poets Focus on Form. Thank you so much. Again, I do love the richness that happens when we're differently intentional on how we're putting a line together or breaking a line because we're using a particular pattern or rhyme scheme. It does create a certain kind of energy and magic, and in some ways for me, it's a way to be a little bit of to try on a voice that I get used to my own typical patterns in my narrative voice. And I find that using forms unleashes something in me. And it's really, really interesting to hear some of you have been hearing your poems now for quite a time, and to hear the different variations on how that's kind of changing the energy and the pace of your work by using a form. Wow, so fascinating. Thank you so much, Giulio. Well, Josephine LoRe, I know you write in many, many different forms, and I'm curious. I have a hunch. I think I know what form you might share today, but I've been wrong many, many times before. So we'll hear from Josephine, and then Josephine will be followed by Mary Louise Kiernan.
Okay, thank you. I'll start with a short acknowledgement. I live and write on lands initially inhabited and traversed for centuries by a number of Indigenous peoples, including the Pekani, Tsutsina, Nakota, Kainai, and Siksika, and I would like to thank them and their descendants and their antecedents for having brought culture, poetry, language to the land. And Sandy, I don't know if you would have guessed it because I've never actually written one before, but I was playing with ghazal. I'd learned about ghazal and I'd always struggled with ghazal. So it's a Persian form, originally written by the people who now live in the countries of Iran and Iraq. And just last week or the week before was Nowruz, which is the beginning of their year. So it corresponds with the return of spring. And it's not quite spring in Calgary yet, but it's couplets. And the second line in the couplet often is repeated through, sometimes with variations or sometimes as is. And it has a very, there is a rhyming scheme, there is a rhythm scheme. This one doesn't do all of those things. Oftentimes the themes though it's a poem that can be written about longing or love, loss or lamentation. So this is a springtime ghazal called Blossom. As the snow recedes from lawn and shadows grow long, the crocus prepares to blossom in delight. Hoarfrost disappears from branches and limbs as the crabapple sets itself to blossom in delight. The tall stalk of iris wrapped in secret in the dark, regal purple flowers waiting to blossom in delight. Peonies unfurl tight fists under midsummer sun. How we yearn to watch these petals also blossom in delight. And you will return to me, beloved, after this long winter apart. Our sweet kisses and elixir, our yearnings blossom in delight. Thank you.
Beautiful and appropriate for the season. Here, Kim and I were chatting a little bit about the pronunciation of the form, and we know we get to hear it in different ways. Some folks pronounce ghazal, like there's many different pronunciations. Whatever the pronunciation you share, the form is delightful and creates just such a beautiful propulsion of sound and richness in the repetition and those couplets. I love those couplets in the form. So thank you. And to begin our month of April with a poem, Blossom. I couldn't think of a better poem or form to share for today. Thank you, Josephine. Beautiful. Well, we now will get to hear from Mary Louise Kiernan, and again, I love that we are drawn to form in all the different variations that we've already shared. So Mary Louise, and then we'll hear from Catherine Ronan.
Hello, everybody. I'm zooming in from the Hudson Valley in the state of New York, and the pond behind me has finally thawed, and the 2 resident egrets flew in yesterday. It was just beautiful. So I have a tanka, and a tanka is a Japanese poem consisting of 5 lines, the first and third of which have 5 syllables, and the other 7, making 31 syllables in all, and giving a complete picture of an event or a mood. So tankas don't normally have, a single tanka would not normally have a title. Usually it's a tanka sequence or a tanka string, and those would be titled, but I think this tanka might lead to other tankas, so it has a title. Lesson in a Labyrinth. walk the path circle to its center. Wonder, now what? I gaze and learn. Times in life I need to stop, return to from where I came.
Beautiful. You know, there's something also about, as I just put in the chat, you know, we have all benefited so much from the beauty of Japanese poetic forms for centuries. And I at least find for me that crystallization that happens in these short lines. There's a fullness to the sparseness and the space that happens with the form. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Thank you so much, Mary Louise, for sharing the tanka with us today, or your tanka. And again, another just stunning contribution to our Poets Focus today is on form. And as I've mentioned, folks are reading one poem piece from any type of form that they're working in, sharing a little bit about the history of the form, the significance of it to their own work. And I've also encouraged folks as well to feel free to share books that you appreciate that are either written in form or are craft books about the form. I shared some at the top of the hour, but there are also some incredible, incredible books of poetry themselves that are completely written in form. And so Josephine is holding up a number of them already. So yeah, you want to share a little bit about those? Yeah, you're unmuted. So yeah.
Sorry, I had put them into chat. They're by Naomi Beth Wacken or Waken, The Way of Haiku and The Way of Tanka. So not just how to, but why to, and what you're trying to express. Mary Louise, those were lovely.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, Catherine Ronan, I'm very eager to hear your contribution for today's reading, and then we'll be followed by Liz Lara.
Well, I'm not a fan of form, I have to admit, but I did a week-long course with Paul Muldoon in Bantry last year, and this poem is called Paul Muldoon Requests a Sestina. Now I got into huge trouble because I turned around to Tom, who was sitting next to me, and I was like, I hate sestinas. And Paul Muldoon said, like, excuse me, what are you doing down there? Like, did you pay good money to come here? I said, yes, I did. And he said, well, you shouldn't be looking at anybody else except me. So this is sestina I had to write for Paul Muldoon. It's called Paul Muldoon Requests a Sestina. The day would end on a glowing stake. Moon surrendered to purple powder. All the medieval monks went wild. Hope forced the feathers of the tribe, ending in a yellow dandelion tattoo after a day thick with the soup of plot. The gate was unlocked as part of the plot. I buried the hatchet with lots at stake, lit houses with tongues of tattoo, the hangman's wife dried gunpowder, 11 toes counted me out of the tribe, electric storm turned untamed to wild. Garlic from the hedgerows picked wild, a cauldron full of frogs and salty plot, headless spiders with 8 legs a tribe, gallows glowing with embers of stake, spells I weave need blue dream powder, evening finished with lonely tattoo. Others got a mystic circle goat tattoo, Notes on a page dance around wild. The jury enjoyed new talcum powder inked with the juice of cockroach plot. Decision, 1 for me, 2 for the stake. New anthem for pregnancy in the tribe. Pride in her name and pride in her tribe. It's your one with the dragonfly tattoo. She's next to Burns singing at the stake. Secrets found in her strawberries wild. A hooded magistrate unearthed the plot. Local ladies agreed with extra powder. Her opium plants burst delicious powder. Secret recipes for the health of the tribe. Everybody fought for the deeds of her plot as her flesh burned with coded spell tattoo. Flames lit the universe beyond wild. Her pockets full of future red on the stake. The plot swallowed her adolescent tattoo. Powder for cheekbones sticks to the tribe who swallow all things wild each year at her stake.
Well, you may not like the Sestina, but the Sestina really likes you. Wow. Yeah. Again, I'm a huge fan of the Sestina, actually, because I love I love the obsession of the repetition and the variation on how you can turn a word on itself in all different variations. And oh, masterful. Not to mention also, like, you know, bringing Paul Muldoon into it, like, just brilliant. Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you, everyone.
You know, write another Sestina anytime. I know that they're like infuriating, but I hope it'd be really curious to hear like what you learned from that process at some point. All right, well, Liz Lara, what are you going to bring to the party today? Thank you so much for joining us. And Liz will be followed by Ken Burch.
So thank you for having me here, and thank you for putting this together. And it's just amazing to be with all these people from all over the place, all over the world. Well, I also have a Sestina, and Catherine is definitely a difficult act to follow. I'm not sure if I want to go hide under my table, but anyway, here it is. Just a brief explanation. This is like version 26 of this poem. I tried and I tried and I tried and nothing was working. And so I kind of threw up my hands and said, okay, let me try a form. And so this is what happened when I tried the form. The poem is called Too Late to Say Goodbye, and it's for my father. The night I left, I didn't say goodbye. In your room, shades drawn, you slept alone. Those days, more and more, you needed rest. I willed away the death hiding in your eyes. Why didn't I grab it by the throat, pitch it out of the room? Was I in some prison cell locked away? All those years you tried to sell me your brand of church, the one I bid goodbye. Was that the reason why? I turned my back, pitched your house of God on the heap. Why did I leave you alone, even though I saw the dark circles under your eyes, like your mother's eyes when she didn't get to rest after the long bus ride to our home, cardiac arrest, her last harsh breaths splitting the air in the cold cell of her hospital room. Not ready yet to read her eyes or accept the leaving of the soul, I didn't say goodbye. At home, her last plate of food sat untouched, alone. Outside, beneath the pines, the night black as pitch, I stood, blood hot with regret. The pine cones I pitched shattered into shards. I kicked away the rest. When we emptied out her house, you sat alone on the edge of her bed, a hostage in your solitary cell of memory, your family a shattered chain. Goodbye was trapped in the silence of your throat, your eyes fixed on some distant spot, immobile as ice, until a flash of light from her mirror pitched towards the sun brought you back. Goodbye. Her life summed up in a set of carnival glass. The rest, wood stove, pie cupboard, a question of what to sell. How to measure your desolation. She alone inhabited the light as you did. And now you, lone child of her union, would never set your eyes on her again. How could we know that soon the cells of your heart would collapse, that you would pitch floorward, body undiscovered in the steam room's dark. The rest, your body on the morgue's marble slab, too late to say goodbye. Thank you.
Wow. Liz, I've heard a lot of sestinas, and that is a magnificent, magnificent sestina. And what I find about the form, and what I think you alluded to, is that sometimes, particularly a form like the sestina with its repetition of words and that obsession to have to find, to find the end of the line, allows us to craft a poem that we've yearned to write, that we could not write, that we were challenged to write in free verse or in free form. And the form allows us to say those things that had seemed unspeakable. That is a magnificent poem. Thank you so much. Wow. I hope it's published somewhere, and if it's not, I'd love to see it on the page. I'd love to see it on the page. Fabulous. Well, folks, we're getting an amazing lesson in how to use form today. It's bringing forth just such interesting poems from each of you. For some of you in ways that you don't typically craft a poem, and for others of you, it's the way that you master and hone a narrative and a sensibility. Really powerful work. Well, next we will hear from Ken Burch, followed by Lynda V. Crawford. Ken, great to have you with us. I know that you really also are a master at using form to kind of harness the power of a poem and a feeling and an energy. So I'm so glad you're able to join us today.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Hello, everyone and everywhere that's in this. This is something I've done a number of times in the past. I've used the structure of haiku and created kind of a linked series of poems in that. I think one thing that draws me to haiku briefly is just growing up in the Northwest. In some ways, the weather on the western side of the Cascades can give you a kind of haiku sensibility. You spend a lot of time kind of looking out at the rain, and it creates a contemplative sense. And I guess what I'm looking at in this poem, the structure also helps me find things I didn't know I was thinking. And this one is about sort of struggling to keep places of contemplation, struggling to keep the places where something, this type of poetry can be written in a world where that seems to be an effort to try to, in some way, drown that out because it's not bold and brass and advertising enough. So this is kind of where this is going. One line of 5 words, the next of 2 words more, then 5 more in the third. In this structure lived every forest once snowbound, every heating sea, where once quiet lived in these 19 syllables, commerce drowns out all. Where the South took ease, free from ego's strutting urge, now the billboards rise. Tranquil sounds and sights, Hodo, Samisen, young Bloms, all to fragments smashed. Each of us then must be an incubator of silence, not yet born. Thank you.
That is Ken Burch, folks. Thank you so much. Again, Ken, we should do this more than once a year. Right. Yeah, this is really amazing. Amazing work today, everyone. I love that. And we're getting to hear from so many people. Thank you so much, Ken. Great to hear you. And we now will hear a poem of Lynda V. Crawford, followed by Ann Tweedy. Thank you, Lynda, for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much. I don't write in form. I have difficulty. If Martina McGowan was here, she would mention a workshop, a series of workshops that I've been in with her, trying to learn the ghazal, the pantoum, etc. Very difficult. In this case, I'm trying my hand at a form called the skinny. And the reason I'm going to share my screen is it's the kind of form I think that the impact, if you could see my screen, you have to see it as well because it's so short, and once it's read, you can't always tell. So sometimes I think the page is perfect for this kind of form. And I'll put the information about it in the chat as well. When a son is not psychic, he needed a doctor. Voices, teen, sounded psychic. Voices, prayed, jade, failed. Voices, a doctor was needed. And as you can see, that form, it requires, it's 11 lines, and the first and 11th are a variation of each other, but then the second and the 6th and the 10th must be one word and must be the same one word. And it was created by a poet and author, Truth Thomas. So this is my first attempt, having sat through a workshop of his, and maybe now I'll try other forms. So thank you very much for listening. And I'll stop sharing now.
Lynda V. Crawford sharing with the skinny, which I have not heard of that form. Created at Howard University. Very, very interesting. I'm really fascinated to learn more about the further history about how the two of them, the origin of it. If others of you are also working in that form or have worked in that form, I wouldn't be surprised if there are some folks in the room that are well versed in the form. I love the focus on the repetition, and it's almost like an envelope, like that kind of the first and the 11th line, and and the containing that movement from one word, the deliberateness and the precision that requires, and yet how it could evoke so much power, even in the narrative, like just in 11 lines. Amazing. Thank you so much, Lynda, for sharing such a provocative form with us. I'm really looking forward to reading more poems in the skinny form.
All right, thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's great. Well, we now will hear from Ann Tweedy, followed by Gordon Ferris. And again, I mentioned a little bit earlier, I had the pleasure of getting to see Ann in person at AWP, and I hope that really in this lifetime I will find a way to meet each of you in person. Ann and I had met in person before, but it was so great to see you.
Oh, thank you, Sandy. It was so wonderful to see you. And I also want to acknowledge that I'm on the unceded lands of the Santee, Yankton, Ponca, and Omaha people. And I was just blown away by the earlier poems. Mine's kind of a fun sestina, I guess, and a really loose one. And it's from years ago when I was doing a residency at Vermont Studio Center, and was missing Washington where I lived at the time. And it's kind of a spring poem, so maybe it fits. Rock Dove Rovings. I write in the shadow of Vermont's Mount Mansfield, though it may be too small and too far off to cast a shadow, this hybrid of mountain and hill. Late afternoon sun ripens pink behind it. Early spring's prominent bird is the pigeon. Snow has melted into muck all week. Not a single icicle hangs from a gutter, begging a child to suck it. Trucks no longer jackknife on salted roads. Compared to the steady, subtle Northwest, seasons here jackknife, or that's what I remember from my childhood in Mansfield, Massachusetts. Once winter left, then came back in late April, the trees thick with icicles. The snow was higher than my 6-year-old body and stayed that way. No hybrid of winter and spring, but winter in full force. Against an open window, pigeons huddled, their gentle cooing almost ripening into a collective cry. I'll write in Vermont this April as spring ripens, then leave just before it bears fruit. Writers are watchers and have no need of jackknives or other practical implements to cut fruit or anything else. Like pigeons, we scavenge what we can from the detritus of humanity, even from Mansfield, Mass, from which there was not much to scavenge, the place a drab hybrid of small town and suburb. Still, there were stark seasons, winter replete with icicles, spring with all the flowers I could imagine, summer a sparkling festival, chill, crisp fall, then icicles again, the year a wheel that whisked from one extreme to the next, another ripening just around the corner, not like Washington where seasons bleed hybrids instead of pure animus. How I longed on the West Coast for those jackknife turns of weather, but now in the valley of Mount Mansfield, I miss the mild winter that had already seeded to dazzle. Besides, pigeons seem out of place in this tiny town. I want swans and geese, not that I dislike pigeons. They have as much right to be here as anyone, even melted icicles. Wherever I find myself, I'm always glad it's not my hometown, Mansfield, Mass, though it's not so much the town as my childhood there. It's sad ripening into adulthood. But the beauty of sad beginnings is that as an adult, you can jackknife away from them, forget everything, almost, your new life a hybrid of where you came from and where you've landed. People are always building a hybrid existence. If only we could be like pigeons, satisfied wherever we are. Even in suburbs that jackknife into cities, pigeons are content. They can handle northeastern winters, icicles and all. No need to migrate. I can't say if they anticipate winters ripening into spring, or if they prefer some places over others, for instance, Seattle over Mansfield. but I bet they like hybrid seasons better than being surrounded by icicles. And what animal, including a pigeon, wouldn't enjoy ripened fruit if only to pick jackknifed peelings out of a gutter in, say, Mansfield?
Oh, and yeah, write a whole book of Sestina's, please. Wow. I'm reminded in listening to your poem that Elizabeth Bishop, great modernist poet from the US, but had lived in different places around the world, a lot of poems about Brazil, had written about, she has a often anthologized Sestina called, not surprisingly, Sestina. But in talking about the Sestina, she said there's, what she always would try to do is have one word that's just so strange, and so there should be at least one of them that just brings a kind of tension and a attention and an attention to it, because it's just not a word that you're that used to. And I was feeling that so much energetically with jackknife, how you use jackknife. And what I also loved about the poem itself, also mentioning the idea of the instrument, you know, that in a sestina, those 6 words really become instruments of the poem. And because they are so required to take their twists and turns to keep the momentum of the poem going. And I know where Mansfield, Mass is. Because I went to Wheaton College.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
I know. I forgot. Yeah. So thank you so much, Anne. What a great contribution. And I also want to say, just to add this to the idea of Sestina, what I think you did so well also is, what a great idea to use the Sestina to also explore psychic and literal physical geography, the idea of place, you know, to use the Sestina to do that. Fabulous. Thank you so much. Well, Gordon Ferris, always a pleasure, always a pleasure. And curious to hear the form that you'll share with us. And then you will be followed, my friend, by Dianne Knox.
Good evening, everybody. I'm reading from Donegal in the northwest of Ireland. I don't normally write in form, only in workshops or in as an exercise. And I'm going to read an attempt at a villanelle. It's called In Alternate. If every choice you never made, every dream you pushed away, in an alternate world this game was played, its consequence a price you gladly paid. Though the heart is hurt, you never sway in every choice you never made, cause was just you were afraid to speak your wish and what you may. In an alternate world this game was played, the outcome is your dreams are made, and in another place they play. If every choice you never made had lived life and plans were laid, to seed and flower and bloom in May, in an alternate world this game is played. You stand tall, you're not afraid in defiance of what they say. What if every choice you made in an alternate world this game was played? Thank you.
I was so hoping that someone would bring the villanelle to the table. And you did it just magnificently, Gordon. Thank you. The villanelle, that French form, with its weaving of the lines, and it's also rhyme scheme, quite a challenging form, but it allows, I think, for a great meditation on a concept or an idea, because how that line, how the lines keep folding over on each other. They're hypnotic to me. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful form. Thank you so much, Gordon. Well, now we will hear from Dianne Knox, the Pantoum, another fabulous kind of folding form. And I think of it a little bit like the origami of poetry, the Pantoum. And Dianne will be followed by Sylvia Clare. Thank you so much, Dianne, for sharing the Pantoum with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm not sure what's wrong with my video. It's a new computer and I'm whatever. So you probably know better about Pantoums than I do, but it's a series of quatrains. The second and fourth lines of each stanza are repeated as the first and third lines of the next. And mine is called Female Genital Mutilation, FGM. And it's a subject that came up a couple of years ago, and it makes the rounds kind of when people hear about it, I guess. She should know no pleasure. Genital, excuse me, let me start over. She should know no pleasure. Gender inequality knows no measure. I have misunderstood who was cutting a girl's hood. Gender inequality knows no measure, certainly not mutilation of female treasure. Who was cutting a girl's hood? Done by community women for her own good. Certainly not mutilation of female treasure. Domination, control, the true measure. Done by community women for her own good. Hygiene, tradition in the neighborhood. Domination, control, the true measure. Seen as necessary to fit him in. Hygiene, tradition in the neighborhood. Pain in all things genital, no longer acceptable. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dianne. What a powerful poem. And again, you know, I think so often, at least for me, I can go to form when I am seeking to contemplate and write about something that would otherwise be difficult for me to manage to articulate in my own distorted, strange voice that I use in my own poetry, and to take the subject of female genital mutilation is, and to use the form to do that is, yeah, is quite powerful. Thank you very, very much. Again, I also hope that that is a poem that has found its way into an anthology or somewhere, because one, it's a great use of the form, but also to use the form with such an important message.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Well, you all have brought such incredible poetry to the table today. And can just continue to marvel at knowing what form does. And before we hear from Sylvia Clare, I'll kind of add my own little anecdote that when I was in college, right near where Ann Tweedy's home place, she mentioned in Mansfield, Massachusetts, college is right down the street from there. I had to take a class in form and I hated it. I was so angry I just was like very, 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 very angry that we had to write in form. I was, really rebellious. And I was like, I don't want to be writing in form. I don't want to be reined in. And I am so grateful that my professor, Sue Standing, had us devoted an entire semester to the different forms of poetry. I've gone to them at different times over the years, and I really appreciate what form can enhance in my own voice. So I have a great empathy for those of you who have been like, form so, kind of railing against it, but then seeing what it actually does. So this kind of love-hate relationship with the form, I've had it myself, and yet again, I'm really just astounded by what it produces, and there's so much evidence of that today. Well, Sylvia Clare, looking forward to hearing your contribution to our carousel of form here today. And Sylvia will be followed by Mona Zamfirescu.
Thank you, Sandy. Right, this is a shadorma, which is a Spanish form, sort of similar to haiku. Do you know the form? Shadorma.
I do not.
Shadorma. It's a 3-5-3-3-7-5. So it's a similar sort of thing to a tanka or a haiku, but it's a shadorma. And I wrote it on a philosophical theme. So I'm telling you about it before I've read it, but anyway. Alone, I, never, I have me, always here, loving me. I just need to love her too. Not so hard to do.
Wow, will you put the form in the chat for everyone? For those of us who are not familiar, I am one of them, and this is why I love to come to the readings, because I love to learn new things. And yeah, thank you so much.
Well, trying to, because I'm I teach mindfulness, and I'm very sort of involved in the mindfulness, self-identity, self-relationship thing. I just wanted to use that form to sum it up in a way, and I was very pleased with how that came out. Thank you for your kind words, everybody.
Absolutely.
I shall put it in the chat now. I shall just mute myself.
Sandy, would you make an exception and let her read it one more time?
Oh, sure.
It went.
Oh, okay. I'll try and read it more slowly. I tend to speak a bit quickly. I'm sorry about that. Alone, I, never. I have me, always here, loving me. I just need to love her too. Not so hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah, what an interesting form. And again, I think you used the subject matter of that exploration of self and what that means, like to such good use for the form, like it's its openness, its expansiveness, kind of mirrors the form. Provocative. Thank you so much. Well, I am seeing that. I'm so excited that we will continue onto our wait list. We'll now get to hear from Mona Zamfirescu, excuse me, and then followed by, I have a little tickle in my throat, for Yeva Johnson.
I wanted to share a haiku, but I would also have liked to share screen, because what I like to do with haiku usually is to pair it up with some graphic image. But it's okay if I can't share the screen. I have it right here, so I can show it and then I can read.
You should be able to share the screen, Mona. You should be able to. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
I think it should work.
Okay.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And I could read at crossroads again, no real choice, but listen to the sound of rain.
That's beautiful. Yeah, the haiku. Oh, the haiku, what that haiku will do. What a beautiful contribution to the reading today. I'd really love to. It's making me appreciate rain in a whole different way. I mean, I live where it rains so much, and I can get very, yeah, wow, beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, we will now hear from Yeva Johnson, followed by Cathy Hailey.
Thank you, Sandy. I will say I was lucky enough to see Anne Tweedy in Seattle as well. So maybe I vicariously met you, Sandy, because I'm so sad.
Oh my gosh, Yeva, no, we didn't meet.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
Now I'm heartbroken. It'll happen.
Yeah. I was thinking also of sharing a duplex today. I love this form thing. I hope we do it again sooner than a year. But I am not going to share a duplex today because I was inspired by Josephine earlier on and was taught to call this form the chazal. And that's what I will be reading today. It is called I Sing the Biomythography Eclectic. It has an epigraph after Don McLean, Audre Lorde, Aga Shahid Ali, and Walt Whitman. I had no whiskey, vermouth, or gin, so I swilled rum fast, breath. On the day that the music died, I inhaled for that unsung last breath. Call it man-spreading when there's no room on the bus, but in verbal form, we lament his dumb, unasked breath. It's just a short ride away, but in this pandemic, to spy the Pacific shore at day's end, the setting sun's a vast breath. Our government crumbles beneath lies and corruption. Repeat shocks in the Senate because no bums aghast, breath. The conductor lifts her baton, directs me to hold that F sharp for 5 full measures. I raise my flute and take a huge one, tasked breath. Whether strawberry, apple, pear, peach, or plum, I'm allergic to all. My tongue first tingles, then becomes numb, smashed breath. If Aretha Franklin could return for just one last song, she'd open her mouth and stun. We'd have one asked breath. May we be filled with gratitude, O bringer of life, for each instance and occasion for a fun past breath. Thank you.
create new forms every day. Yeva, create new forms every day or variations on the form. Wow. Fantastic. And folks, I was also hoping that someone would come to the reading and say, I've kind of worked on my own form, and there was the imagination of Yeva Johnson. There it is. And if you're not also familiar with the duplex, I highly recommend investigating the form of the duplex, and maybe you'll put a little bit in the chat about both the forms. It's a form that was created by Jericho Brown, like incredible poet. And I actually have a copy of the American Poetry Review that featured a number of Jericho's duplexes. So I encourage you all to look up these forms that if you're not familiar with. And again, I've learned so much today about new forms that I want to kind of investigate and see how they might enhance things that I'm looking to write. All right, well, now we get to hear from Cathy Hailey, and followed by Don Krieger. Thanks for your contribution, Cathy.
Thank you, Sandy. I'm going to read Flying High. It is a haiku sonnet. I don't know if anybody's done that yet. I came in a little late, so I'll explain afterwards. Flying high. Yellow pigments fade as our rose opens wider till petals cascade. Rainstorm denied her a lifeline earned and deserved. Gerbera daisies, magenta, preserved, stand tall like charming ladies in crowds of proud leaves. How does God decide which flower stays, which recedes? Mother Nature's chide? Darwin's law does not apply. She lived as a butterfly. So it's from my chapbook, I'd Rather Be a Hyacinth, and it's all haiku sonnets. And it's a form that I discovered in Tom Hunley's The Poetry Gymnasium. I think he made it up and talks about it as a marriage of East and West. So the poem is made up of 5 stanzas. 4 of them are haiku, and the last one is a couplet, or you can think of it as 3 haiku and a tanka. But the rhyme scheme is the rhyme scheme of the Shakespearean sonnet, which is completely counterintuitive because that's based on quatrains. And so, it starts out with ABA, and then you skip to the next stanza, the next haiku, and that's where the B falls. So, it's very, it's challenging at first, but you can kind of get, you write yourself into comfort level with it, I think. And I had written a bunch a number of years ago, and then I couldn't figure out what to do with them because they were all ekphrastic based on ballet episodes. And suddenly I had this, epiphany that I could make a haiku sonnet chapbook, because that was an easy way, I thought, to have unity, right? So it's my first chapbook, so I'm happy to have gone there, even if I write free verse a lot of the time. So
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Cathy. Like I love the convergence of 2 forms to create an entirely new configuration of the form, and what that will allow the strength of each of the forms to create a new oh man, I'm thinking about what you were talking about moving from the quatrain to the 3 lines, like the tercet, and how that last line then is like takes that leap into what would be the 4th line. And I'm kind of fascinated by that. So thank you for sharing the haiku sonnet with us today.
Thank you.
Amazing. Really, really, really cool.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Come back and share more. Well, next, I'm sorry, I leapt in, speaking of leaping, leaping a line, I leapt a line, and Max Vandersteen is next, followed by Don Krieger. Sorry about that, Max.
Hey, that's no problem. I came in or signed up late, so I'm just happy to have a chance to read. I was wondering if anybody was going to read a sonnet. And thanks, Cathy, for that introduction to the haiku sonnet, because that's something new to me. And I wanted to share a sonnet as well. So there are, typically sonnets are 14 lines. There are different forms. And this particular one I want to share, it's classified as a South African quilt. It's 2 quatrains of couplets and then a sestet of EFGFG rhyme scheme. So it is called Thou Art in My Thoughts. It goes like this. Thou are in my thoughts and in my heart, even when the bodies are miles apart. Thou soothes when I relieving need, and loves when I for loving bleed. Thou warms me anew when I wane or cool, rebuild my honor when I play the fool, focus my vision when fixed to exclude, and fill my life and soul with gratitude. Not would I be but a spiritless man, dwelling less in hope than discontent, languid and doubtful of all that I feel, unengaged in passion and nonpartisan, if not for the truth in your love's testament and the beauty of living it does reveal. Thank you.
Thank you. That's Max Vandersteen, everyone. Following up the haiku sonnet with a sonnet. I really also appreciate how between the Shakespearean and the Petrarchian, different variations on the sonnet, that there's so many ways to play with the breaking up of the lines rather than just having the quatrain, the quatrain and the final couplet. And I really encourage people to use the sonnet to really play with the sonnet. There's been so much done with that in contemporary times, and it's a great form to explore in that regard. All right, folks, just 3 more forms in our exploration today of form. We'll hear now from Don Krieger, followed by Kim Ports Parsons. Thanks, Don, for joining us with a poem today.
Thanks, Sandy. This one, I'm a little conflicted about reading this one, but it's so topical. As many of you know, probably all, Easter is next weekend. And Maundy Thursday, when the Last Supper happened, is part of that holiday is the Last Supper, which was a Seder, a Passover Seder. Passover also happens this week, coincidentally. It usually doesn't because of the difference in the solar and lunar calendars. Anyway, I wrote a prayer for Passover some years ago. Psalm 151, a Passover prayer. Once again, your death angel turned away, left us whole, you're chosen, terrorized and prayerful for the horror next time. You command, remember. Who can forget? Holiday and self-denial, worship and tyranny, the lies of faith, the firstborn butchered, your people's grace. Two we know defied you, but how many have you really heard? Abraham spoke up for the righteous, Jesus for the sinful cheat, but Moses, the murderer, your darling, spoke only for your vicious caprice. Am I true, kind, good? I judge myself without mercy, but the relentless cycle of slavery and murder we do in your image is humble before your cruel glory. If you truly exist and hear, then hear this. By my poor standards, you are unfit. If I held your might, Almighty God, in that instant I would erase you and your memory from all that is. If you truly exist and care, then as you did Korach, open the earth and destroy me. For though I claim nothing over Aaron or Moses, I claim goodness over you.
That's a poem for the ages. That's a poem for the ages. That's Don Krieger, everyone. Gonna sit with that one for a long, long time. You know, folks, sometimes I hear a poem and I just have to take a pause, and that's, you know, that's the power of poetry, right? It can reach us in those ways that we don't expect to be taken. I feel that way about a lot of Don's poems, actually. So thank you so much, Don, for that prayer, for that prayer. Kim Ports Parsons, you are next, and I want to thank you for being the initiator of this idea for this reading, of us exploring form together. It has been a revelatory experience, and I really do look forward to us doing it again soon, and I look forward to your contribution to the reading.
Thank you. Wow, I'm blown away by this exploration of form today. Don, your poem is so amazing. And everyone, what a ride on this carousel of form today. And I'm going to read a ghazal for Little Grandmother. Little Grandmother Lucinda wore old black boots. She stood barely 4'9" in those old black boots. Hair pinned tight, glasses glinting, mouth set in a line. Her apron was starch stiff above those old black boots. Whittled a stick, chewed one end soft, dipped it in snuff, tucked in cheek, but never spit on those old black boots. Her face turned to lined leather and her uterus fell. Her stubborn hem stayed faithful to those old black boots. In dreams, sometimes she trudged by the wagon again, miles of bleached buffalo bones under those old black boots, woke, washed in a basin, then baked the day's biscuits in a Dust Bowl kitchen, scraping those old black boots. From the porch, she scanned for that looming wall of dark, then swept sills and floors and wiped down those old black boots. She made lye soap, lost all her teeth, sang hard shell hymns, and kicked the devil himself with those old black boots. Day came when all she could do was just sit and stare. She rocked and tapped out the time with those old black boots. Husband and 3 of her children died long before. She hobbled to the yard's edge in those old black boots. She fell on dry ground and conjured a meadow. Blackbirds sang as she rose up from those old black boots. Thanks, everyone.
That's Ports Parsons with the Ghazal, however you choose. As we were saying, tomato, whichever it is. Yeah, again, a beautiful form that allows for that unfolding. Well, folks, I'm going to close us out with, I think, the last poem from Boats for Women. I've tended to use form in different ways over the years, and I thought about doing a sestina that I had written for Rachel Corey. But I think this is a good poem to end, to follow up Kim's with, to go from grandmother to the girl, and where this poem will take us. So this poem is called The Girl Who Catches Everything. We have all the time in the world, in pants pockets, in the space between our breasts, on our tongues, and in the future twirling over us like a girl's fire baton hurled into the stadium sky. In her hands, she will catch all she has all the time. The world will not throw her off balance, despite the swirl of the crowd anticipating her drop, the stress on the edge of every tongue. In the future, twirling naked in bed, we will remember these baton girls we did not risk the chance to undress when we had all the time in the world. We will remember their hair, every curl we did not allow our fingers to address, or our tongues, or the future twirling away from their spectacular bodies. We will pearl our lives with each minute lost. The rest we will have all the time in the world and on our tongues where the future twirls. That's the form, the villanelle. And I want to thank each and every one of you for bringing your tongue-twisting twirls of poems in our exploration today, our poets' focus on form. And I want to remind you of everyone that we heard from with this just incredible carousel of form. I loved how you said that, Kim, the carousel of forms that we heard from today. We heard at the top of the hour from Cathal Mac Threinfhir, Bill Fay, Giulio Magrini, Josephine LoRe, Mary Louise Kiernan, Catherine Ronan, Liz Lara, Ken Burch, Lynda V. Crawford, Ann Tweedy, Gordon Ferris, Dianne Knox, Sylvia Clare, Mona Zamfirescu, Yeva Johnson, Cathy Hailey, Max Vandersteen, Don Krieger, Kim Ports Parsons, and yours truly, Sandy Yannone. Would you all, everyone, please feel free to unmute yourselves and show your appreciation for all of our poems that we heard from today. Really, just
Thank you, everybody.
terrific,
It's beautiful.
terrific meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Really great
Thank
evening. Really loved it. There was
Beautiful.
some fun, so much to learn from each of us as well.
Fantastic,
Absolutely.
everyone.
Absolutely.
Really,
wonderful.
really great.
So much.
I'm actually inspired to try forms again. As I said, I did a workshop and all of I've tried them all and they've been cast aside in a folder. So now it's time to go back in and try to rescue them.
Yes, rescue away.
It's
rescue
almost as if
away,
they,
Lynda.
when you work with them, they can give you so much, but the tendency is to sort of want to be free from them, and yet it's actually a false freedom. It really is.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. What I found out,
We have to
go
learn
ahead.
it.
Yeah. I was just going to quickly
Discipline.
add that what I found is that some poems of mine that are in free verse, when I forced them into a form in the workshop I was in the end, I reverted to free verse, but that the outcome was a much improved poem as a result of having taken it through that exercise. I could have kept it in a form, but in the end, I kind of preferred the free verse, but it was an improved free verse. So forms are, although I run screaming from them, forms are important.
I think it's like, if you learn to use them, and then you can afford to play with them and break the rules. Like anything, if you once you know the rules properly, you can actually start to break them and play with them as well, which obviously some people have because they've made up even more new forms, you know.
I was thinking a lot
form as well, I think. Sorry, go on, my friend. Yeah.
I was going to say, I was thinking a lot of the way form works in jazz and hip hop. It's a structure, but the structure is the basis of the freedom.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah,
I've always considered it a craft, as we said, an apprentice to a craft, and it's poetry. When you have form, you force yourself to use the words to give respect to each word, and it allows you to corral the emotion much better than free verse. But yeah, I'm glad it was a very interesting evening. I'm glad everybody had a chance to experience form. It's good.
No, I would really loved it. We should do this more often. I've really enjoyed this. I can't come every Sunday. It annoys me so much when I have to do other things on Sundays and I can't join you.
Well, we're grateful that for all of you to be able to be here today with us for our exploration of form. It's our Poets Focus opening up April Poetry Month. What a great kickoff to the month of poetry, where I hope you'll get to explore many different variations on form and use that to unleash your voices and your work and learn together. I mean, this was almost its own workshop on form today. And again, I'm so grateful for all of the contributions that we heard from today. I hope, folks, you will join us next Sunday, if you can, as we continue to move through Poetry Month. We will have our new book showcase, but it was going to be a special new book showcase with a theme on Shakespeare's women. Got 3 poets, possibly a 4th poet joining us, but the 3 poets are featured poets with all their new collections that have a focus on Shakespeare's women. Will be joined by Dana Kidd Patterson from the UK, Joe Gatford, and Elizabeth Sylvia. So I hope that you will join us next Sunday, not only to celebrate poetry, month, but we'll take this nod to looking at the month of April has also been heralded for many, many years and decades and centuries as the month of Shakespeare's birth at the end of the month. And we're going to put that a little bit on its head and with a focus on Shakespeare's women. And I wouldn't be surprised if we got to hear a sonnet or two in there. So I hope again, you'll join us next Sunday for our new book showcase here on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry. As always, I'm your host, Sandy Yannone, and I'm so grateful to be able to join you and hear your amazing, amazing voices. Please do celebrate Poetry Month widely. Feel free to post onto our Facebook page with readings that you're giving or poems that you enjoy reading of yours or certainly of others during this month of April, so that we really can embrace Poetry Month in very robustly. Well, I look forward to seeing you all next week. Those of you who can join us live here in Zoom. If not, as you always know, we do, through the devotion of Don Krieger, have recordings of all of our readings. So if you are watching this in recording, thank you. Hundreds and hundreds of you watch us each week after the program has aired. We appreciate your devotion to that. And I look forward to seeing you either live here on Cultivating Voices Live Poetry, or whenever you can join us on our Facebook page. Well, that's it, my friends. And as I say at the end of every program, whether you're writing in free verse or form, use that form of poetry to take good care of yourselves, take exceptional good care of your beloveds, and just keep writing those miraculous poems that you create. We'll see you next time. Happy Poetry Month.
Bye-bye, everybody. Take care. Have a good week.